In the last 2 months, tens of thousands of Americans have died from the coronavirus, and because of how contagious it is, some families have suffered multiple losses. Throughout this crisis, we're sharing the stories behind the numbers. Our lead national correspondent, David Begnaud, joins us from his home in New York. David, good morning.
Anthony, good morning. We're going to take you to Louisiana and Michigan. Both have some of the highest death rates when it comes to the virus. And minority communities in those states have been hit particularly hard, as they have elsewhere around the country. Take Michigan, for example. African Americans account for 14% of the population, but they're 41% of the people who are dying from the virus. So we'll start in Detroit. You're about to meet a lady who says she lost her mother, her grandmother, and her aunt.
March 26th was really kind of the day that, changed everything.
Biba Adams didn't know it yet, but on that day, she would say goodbye to 2 generations of her family.
It's when, my aunt passed, my mom went to the hospital, my grandmother went to the hospital, and of course that would be the last day that I would see them all.
Her mother and her grandmother, Elaine and Minnie Head, lived together in Detroit. They worshiped together at the same church, and they died in the same hospital just 2 weeks apart. And that is her mom, 70-year-old Elaine. She sang in the church choir. She was a retired school counselor. 89-year-old Minnie was the church mother, as they called her. Losing them all at once was really overwhelming.
I'm thinking about what holidays are going to look like now. What so much of my historical legacy is lost.
To South Louisiana now. Keenan Duffy lost her husband.
He had a larger-than-life personality.
He sure did. At 6'7", Keenan Duffy was the life of the party.
Let us go, let us go.
It was earlier this month. The father of 2 from Lafayette, Louisiana, took his mother to the hospital. She tested positive for the coronavirus. And about a week later, he wound up in the same hospital.
Did she know he was in the hospital?
Not at first. We didn't want to tell her, that he was in the hospital because we were still trying to get her to recover.
Kirsten says Keenan kept fighting a fever.
He said, I can't have another night like I had last night.
Keenan Duffy died on April 14th. He would have turned 40 this year. He leaves behind his wife, a stepdaughter, and his 11-year-old son, Caden.
Is there anything you want to say about your dad that we should know?
He was very supportive of me in football and school. He'll be there at every game. He was always on the sidelines saying, go get him, go get him.
Caden's dad, Keenan, had been to the grocery store after he dropped his mother off at the hospital, so there's no way to say for sure where he may have contracted the virus. I will tell you, Keenan's mother, Miss Joanne, is home. She's recovering. She has survived, and she is getting better at her home in South Louisiana. Gail.
Well, it's nice to hear the good news of that, David. But this is the thing. That's why I think it's so important to tell these stories, because so often numbers and statistics don't hit home. But when you can put a name and a face and see how these people were loved, it really makes a difference. And you brought that out when you hear the stories of both of those families.
More than 50,000 people killed, Gail, around the country, and these are just 4 families, and we're going to keep telling them every morning if families are willing to tell us those stories.
Yes, it's important for us to hear, and families want their loved ones remembered. Thank you, David.